And thanks for joining the API 101 session. I'm Singh. And today our agenda is to understand what is APIs and how can we test APIs and develop APIs using Postman. What are requests and responses? And we will try out some of the things, and we will try out some practical with Postman. And then we will be building a GitHub API web app, and no prerequisite is needed for that. And then I will share some follow-up resources, and at the last we will do some question and answers. So let us first start with what is API. So in general term, if I say, then API allows two application to interact with each other. Here is example of a digital restaurant. When you go into a restaurant, you order a dish to the waiter. The waiter goes to the chef and requests that, and in response of that request, he gets the dish. He serves the disk back to, in this case, you send a request to the API, which is here the API is the waiter, and then our request will be sent to the server. Server is the chef here, and then a response will be received from the server, and then it will be sent to the. And in the client server architecture, we send a request to the API, and the request is sent to the server, and the server gives us a response. What is API? Application Programming Interfaces, or API allows services to communicate with each other. As I said, the APIs can exist between two software, and it can also exist between two hardwares or between hardware and software. There are several software that uses API today's world. APIs allow developer to access data from a service like Google or Twitter. There are several APIs. You must have heard about the REST API. You must have heard about the OpenAI API, and you must have heard about GitHub APIs and so on. So one more example. Suppose your friend wants to make a banking app and he requires a calculator for it, and he does not want to make a calculator by himself. And you have a calculator app, but you don't want to share your code with him. So what you can do is simply make a endpoint and make an API for your app and share the endpoint with your friend. And then your friend can use that endpoint to access the functionality of the calculator. Now, we got three advantages from it. First, the language your friend uses, the language you uses, does not matter because the communication will be done via APIs. And second, is that the friend didn't need to reinvent the wheel. And third, you do not need to share your code. Let's see example of Instagram, how Instagram uses APIs. Suppose you open Instagram and you click on the camera app. The camera sends a API request, and then it captures your image and displays back. You must have seen that Instagram uses several types of GIFs. The Instagram uses the Giphy API to use those GIFs. There is API for everything. There are several APIs: the Cat API, the Open Weather API, the YouTube to MP3, Spotify, Google. There is also GitHub API, which we'll be using later part of the presentation and make a web app out of that. So APIs turn software into Lego bricks, obviously, because APIs. Suppose you are making a open AI chat interface using HTML and CSS. So you have to use the OpenAI API. So you are just making the client side of the part, but the rest of the part for the rest of the chat you will be doing with the AI. You are using OpenAI API for that. So different API can contribute to it. Suppose it also has a weather feature, then it also have a weather API. So different APIs make up the different blocks of the program or the software, and we can say API turns software into Lego bricks. What is Postman? Postman is a collaborative API development platform that simplifies creating, using, and testing APIs. So it is simple that we can understand. We can test APIs, we can develop APIs with the UI, and We can also do some cool stuff with it. 98% of the Fortune 500 companies and organizations use Postman. There are famous companies like PayPal, Uber, and Philips. Walt Disney also uses Postman for its development. Uh, s- okay, so how was it like to work with APIs before Postman? So you can see at on my left hand side how it's used to work with command line. Is it looks really messy, and for a starter, it must be really confusing, and he may lose motivation in that case. The Postman provides her with a nice interface in that case, and you can easily test and develop our APIs through Postman. Requests and responses. So as I already told that whenever you use a API, you send a request, and the request is then sent to the server, and server gives a response, and the response is then sent to the client side. So here is a request server pattern. The client sends the request to the server sends a response to the client using the API. There are several types of web API. The famous ones are public, internal, and partner APIs. The public API is available to all developers or external users with minimum restriction. Suppose the GitHub API, the OpenAI's API, the Jokes API, the Book API, and the Railway API. These all are examples of open API because you can easily use it without any permission. And there and then there is internal APIs. Internal APIs are used within an organization and are hidden from any external users. So, suppose you're working in a company and your company develops a API for personal use within the company premises. In that case, you use the internal API. A partner API is similar to API, but feature has restrict access meant for business partners. Suppose you meant a API and you want to share it only with your business partners and selective partners. So in that case, you use a partner API. Types of API architecture and protocols. There are actually several types of architecture and protocols. Let's discuss the famous ones: the REST, SOAP, JSON, and XML RPCs. The REST architectures, the full form is representational state transfer. So before that, let's understand what is protocol. Protocol defines how diverse modules interact, and architecture defines that how sets of protocols are organized. So it's important to understand the difference between the architecture and protocols. The protocol defines how diverse its modules interact, and architecture is what it defines how sets of protocols are organized. So we need to understand difference between them. The SOAP API, basically the full form is Simple Object Access Protocol, and the JSON and RPC and XML RPCs. The RPC is basically a remote procedure call protocol. The JSON RPC uses JSON to encode, and the other one XML RPC uses XML to encode. So, what are the advantages of API? There are several advantages. The main advantages are the backend and frontend can be built in different languages because different languages has different advantages. So we, according to the advantages, we can use different languages on different sites of our software, the backend and frontend. And there is no need to reinvent. Suppose there is already invented software and it is an available API, then we don't need to reinvent the software because we can just use the API that saves our time, cost, and money. And APIs makes our app faster because when we use API is the server. We can use cloud-based servers which are highly faster than our servers we set in our local environment. So it can make our app faster. So now we will see a demo. Let's try this link. Before that, you must have seen the GitHub readmes, and you must have seen the stats in the GitHub readme. Those stats are generated using APIs. So let's see an example out of this. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Now you can see this GitHub stats. So it shows the GitHub stats of my account. Basically this. This username is called a query. We will learn about it later in this presentation. Let us try someone else's account. Let me take someone's username from here. Let's take for this person's username. Let us take person's username and just see how we can generate these tags out of this. So I'm going to replace my username here with Khan's username, and we will see that how the stat will change. So this stat is generated using Khan's GitHub account. So this app is developed by someone using Visual app, and it uses queries as the username. As you can see, what is how they are extracting is this is they are using GitHub APIs and extracting data from your GitHub account and then converting it into most used languages stats. So here the username is known as query because when you change the query, you get a different result for a different user. Okay, let us now move the presentation. Okay, where were we? Okay, next. So there are three ingredients to make a request. The method. There are several methods like get, post, put, and delete, and address and endpoint and path. So let us discuss about them. So what you see here is a method. So method is basically what kind of operation you're going to perform. Defines your methods. Get will define what you're trying to retrieve some information using the endpoint. The endpoint is basically the URL you are giving here to make use of the API. And the post method is used when you try to add something into the web app or the server. And put and patch can be used to update the information, and delete can be used to delete some information on the server. Okay. So this what you're seeing the HTTPS PS is basically the protocol, and if I advance it, this is the protocol. Okay, and this is the host, the address of the server, and path. Path is destination where the request can be heard or executed. So if we combine this full thing, this is known as the endpoint. Endpoint basically the URL which you use to utilize the API is the endpoint. And the methods, there are several other methods as well, but the famous ones are the most used ones are get, post, put, and delete. So I will repeat once more that get is used to retrieve information, post is used to put information into the server, and put can be used to update information, and delete can be used to delete information on the server. Let us move ahead. Specifying details. So parameters, as I already discussed using the examples of GitHub stats, in which we were passing the parameters as GitHub username, and we were getting the that username's GitHub stats. Authorization, headers, and body types. We will discuss it while doing practical with Postman. Uh, Data types. There are different types of data types. So when you are using post, suppose you're using post to put some data on the server, then you need to write something of what you need to put. That can be in different format like JSON, text, HTML, and XML. The most used ones is JSON, but the other ones is also used depending upon your use case. This is a JSON example, and yes, I want to say something that JSON is not an object because it spells like JavaScript object notation. So many people think that it's an object, but it's not an object. It's a string. You can see a difference. If it's an object, you won't see that double quotes over here. Let me see that example of this as well. To write JSON versus object. See, comes down with two double quotation mark. Okay, you can see this one. Okay, so you can see the difference. JavaScript object, you can see there are no double quotes on the left hand side. But in case of JSON, we have double quotes on the left hand side. So JSON is not object, it's a string. If you search is JSON uh, string, this is purely a string, you can see. Okay, let's move now. Okay, we have navigate app. Okay, status codes. There are several status codes. The basic ones are like 200 for okay, that means the your work is done successfully. 201 is means we created, and 404 means not found. There are several others like 500 means internal server error, and headers in accessing what data type. This all will understand while doing practical. So that I can understand, explain it even better. So you can use this link. I will share you the link in the chat box, and you can follow it and follow along with me. So let me go to my Postman. If you don't have a Postman account, please do sign up with the link I will be sharing in the chat box. Okay, after you fork it, you will see the basics of API, the basics of API with authorization and building of API and Postman visualization. And before you proceed, please click on these three dots and navigate to the G documentation button and click it. You will get all the information that how you need to proceed. For now, you will copy this link. Please fork it before I proceed. Okay. So let us first move here. Let us first read what's written here. Uses of the API get posts and delete. Okay. Okay. To get the request, to get the response, we will be importing this PS URL. So let us try it. Make sure you have the get selected over here because we are trying to retry information from server. Okay, you get the hello world message over here. Okay, next is say if we want to use the choke API, we need to use /choke. If we want to use the code API, we can use /code. So let's use /doc API. So basically you can put over here, just copy it. So we have over here. Let us view the documentation of this. The documentation. Okay, it says if we send a request to this endpoint, we will get a response. I love you 3000. So let us try it. I hope you have copied the link from here. Send it. Okay, we are getting I love you 3000 over here. Let's to the next part. Let's use the in point. So as per the instruction, we will use the slash choke to try information for the choke API. Let's use it. Okay, what we're getting. See if here in the bottom side, if you see properly, in this we're getting the response as JSON. But if you want to see in the preview format, just readable format, then you can use the preview button from here. It will be more easy to read. So it's basically a joke with the ID. The author is not defined. And a joke is who the programmer. A programmer is machine who turns coffee into code, and the source is provided over here. Okay, so let us move with the post. Okay, let us see the documentation which was proceeding. We saw the joke. We tried this. We tried this one as well. Okay, now let us try the post method. Okay, so the endpoint remains the same. Let us post this one. Just copy it from here. Then we go to the post method and choose the body, raw, and JSON. Okay, and suppose I just erase it, paste it. Okay, so you can also say there are several languages you can use to send the post. Okay, so we are using JSON here. This market is JSON, and you have chosen raw here. And it is related to the body. You will view it, and now let's send it. Okay, okay. So let's see what's the documentation. Okay, it says make sure you update the ID is also the put method or post method. Okay, can delete it. You get okay. So we are getting a ID in return of this. Let's see. Yes, we are getting a ID. For this, please note it. Please note your what ID you are getting. I'm getting 2971. Okay, so now we will try the put method. Okay, so let us see what documentation says. Always refer documentation so that it is easy for you to follow. Okay. Now it says I have used in point and I can just put it. Okay. So we need to replace the ID over here. Let's copy it and move the put method. Make sure your in point is this slash row, and then make sure you have chosen JSON from here and raw. Let us put our ID we got here. We got 2971. Let us put the ID 2971. Okay. Let us change something. Suppose I want to. So we are using the put method to update something on the server. So let us change the author. Here are my SSH. So let's just send it. Okay, you get 204 no content no font. This is basically we are not returning anything from the server. That's why we are getting 204 no content. The server is will process the request. Okay, but it is not done. As you can see the message over here. The server has successfully processed the request. So the changes must have been reflected. Let us use the get method and see if we are getting that slash row. Now we are going to add some parameters. So how we add parameters? We write the key. Suppose I say ID, and I know the ID was just 2971, right? So let us put the value 2971. You can do this way, or you can also just ignore it and just write slash 2971. You can also in documentation, let us refer it before we send the request. Yes, we can do that. So we are basically using the joke API and we are querying 2971 ID. Okay, so let's send it. Okay, you can see the author name has been changed. It has changed whatever it was beforehand. It was Ali Mustafa. Now it's my username. So the author name has been changed. So now let's try the delete data method. Our ID was 2971. Let us use some other method to do this. You can see this something is written over here. Paste URL. Okay, so you can give any name over here. Let us say just P. And when you over it, so let's get the base URL first of all. Our base URL was just right. Let's just copy it. Go to delete method. You can also set a environment variable. Okay, so you don't need to write it again and again. So let us just add a new variable, and you can give the value. We'll give the base URL over here, and you can set it active environment. We don't have active environment, so let us set it to new environment first of all, and then over it and add a variable and add the URL. Select active environment and set variable. So it will act as a, you can see when you hover over it, you can see the base URL. B reflects base URL now. Now let's query it. So we want to delete the ID 2971. So we write 2971 over here. Okay, let us confirm the ID was 2971. Yes. Okay, so now we will use delete method and it should delete. Okay, we're getting some error. 1 minute. Let us see the documentation. So always request documentation whenever you are stuck. The delete method. Okay, let us use this link. Seven one. Send it. Okay. So the job with ID 2971 is deleted successfully. Okay, make sure you have followed along with me the entire practical session for the Postman. Let us now proceed with our presentation. Okay, so what we will be doing now is we will be building a GitHub API web, and for that you need HTML, JavaScript, and live server installed in your VS Code. So first of all, make a folder and name it suppose GitHub API. Okay, now just right click over it. Make sure you have VS Code installed in it. Okay. And next, make sure you have live server installed. Let me show you live. Okay. Okay, so install this live server, and now let's proceed. Now select the language over here, write HTML. Okay, after I do that, just write exclamation mark. Okay, before that, you should save it. Write something like index. continuous learning. Okay, so we have index to dash email now. Okay, HTML already exists. Fine. Okay, you will get this template over here. Just click on it. Okay, you will get this basic template. Okay, now it will be easy for you to write. Next, what we will doing in this GitHub API web app is we will be having a input text input, and we will have a source button for that, and we will be extracting all the information from the GitHub of the username which will be inputted and displayed on the web app. Okay, so first of all, we need a input for that. So let us write input, and let us give a ID to reference it later on. Let us give a ID of anything like user. Okay, and just close it after that. And let's make a button after that, the search button, side button, and the references we use the ID, so ETN. Okay, and just give it a name. Okay, so now we will be writing the content we'll be receiving with the help of GitHub API into this div. So let's make a div and give it a ID as, suppose, the response we will be getting. So let's give the ID is res. Okay, so let's make a JavaScript file, and let's name it app.js. Okay, and let's reference it over here, the app.js. Let's make a script script, and just write source of script as app.js. Just close it. Let's go to app.js. Okay, before we start, let us make a function. Function, suppose user function. So we'll get the user information out of that. User func is brace. Okay, so it's the wrong braces here. 1 second. So it's a simple web app. No need to worry. You don't need to run the entire JavaScript for it. It's like basic programming. Let's make a name. So what we'll be doing is, so we will be getting, first of all, let me write it. Document dot get element by ID, and as I said, we'll be going to reference our input tag with this ID used. So we let us access the input tag with this ID as user. Okay, and retain single quotes and put dot value, because we want the value. First we get the element by ID user, and we want what element is present in the tag that is referenced by this ID. Okay, and let us declare a URL. Next, let's write it URL anything one like. Now, to use the GitHub API, the GitHub API base URL. In the session we have talked about the base URL. The base URL is http is to // API github.com/users slash. And now what we will be doing is NAME. So what we are doing is, first we are using the ID to reference the input tag, and we get the value what is present in the input tag. Uh, and the value is obviously the user ID of GitHub, and user ID is the name of the GitHub. And then what we are making URL one, and we are using a base endpoint, which is HTTP api.github.com/users, and we are adding the string with the name. The name here acts as a parameter. Okay, now we use the fetch. The fetch is used to get data using the API. We use the URL one, and then we write 10. Capitalized. Okay, so we are fetching from the URL that we defined with the URL one, and then we say that res is our response, and then what we will be doing inside it, we will be getting document dot get element by ID, and then we will refer res. Res is our response ID, inner HTML is equal to. Okay, so what we are doing here is we are getting the element by ID res, and the res ID refers to this div. So basically, we will be writing all the information we will be getting from the API into this div with ID res. So we are getting accessing this div using this ID res, and we are using inner.html to write the contents. So now we will be writing the contents over here. So let us first get the image of the user. Okay, so if you write data that we are getting dot avatar underscore URL. So avatar underscore URL recognizes the avatar, basically the profile picture of the user. So the data we are getting. Okay, so we have an error over here, I guess. Yes, not yes. Okay, so the data we are getting as a response. We are accessing the avatar underscore URL, which refers to the profile picture of the user. Okay, let us close it and just close. Now, just see over here using the code I7. Let's click on this. Okay. We didn't add a event listener. So when we're clicking it, we don't have an event listener to make an action over here. We write document dot get element by ID ptn. So we are accessing the button basically with this ID dot add event listener. So what it will be basically doing? So you don't need to uh, understand you just need to understand what it is doing. You don't need to mug up the syntax right now. Just understand how things are working right now. Okay, so I will call the function on which is user function. Okay, so now it should work. All you cannot put it over here, but losing that over here is not required. Okay, to fit over here. Okay, so finally we are getting the image over here. Now we will add some other tips. Let's add the details of the name of the user. Okay, so let us right here span it. Name. So it will basically give the name of the person. Okay, let's just close it now. Okay, so now let us display the number of followers person has. So TA data dot first the following, and then we display with a dollar sign clear data dot followers. Okay, so let us also print the location of the person. Head of location. This is actually get rid of that. And at the last, let's print the bio of the person. Let's say bio data dot bio. Okay, so let us see how our app works now. Search it. Okay, so I'm getting my image and how many people I follow and how many followers I have. my location, and the bio I have put on my GitHub. Let's try someone else like Okans. Let's try for him. Let's just search it. Yes, we're getting about for him as well. Uh, so he has 6,000 followers. He lives in Bangalore, and we can see his bio as well. So this is your GitHub API web app that you have met right now. So I will be uploading it in GitHub, and I will share the link with you so you can play around with it. Now let us proceed with our presentation. Okay, so we have checked this off. We have made a web app using GitHub API. Okay, so the recap. So recap, we learned about the methods, the addresses, parameters, authorization, and body data. Okay, so we understand the body data can be in form of JSON, text, XML, and parameters. The as I showed in the GitHub API, we use the parameter as a username, the addresses and methods. Address is basically your endpoints, and the methods is basically I show the practical of four methods. That is get, post, put, and delete. Get is used to retrieve the information from the server. Put is used to update. Post can be used to put the data on the server, and delete can be used to delete data on the server. Okay, so you can continue learning as an API student expert. So I will be sharing all the links uh, soon, and so you can also apply to become a Postman student expert, and I will sharing this link with you guys. Okay, so you can win some amazing swags as well. For that, you need to use the hashtags, hashtag Postman 101 session, and hashtag Postman. You can tag me as well. I will share all my social details and all the resources with you in the chat box shortly. And I will also share it with you via email, so no need to worry about that. Okay, so your task to claim the swags is first of all you need to create a public workspace with a collection using API of your choice. So as you can see at the starting of the practical session of the Postman, we saw three APIs: the joke API, the book API, and the third one was railway API. So use any one of them. We did the joke API, preferably use some other API for your testing purpose. Okay, so I give you additional task, and the additional task is make use of the GitHub API and retrieve data of the user from the GitHub and show it on your web page. You can use any language if you want. If you want to use JavaScript, as I have shown, you can use that as well. Okay, you can use hashtag Postman student, hashtag Postman API, and you can tag me so that I identify that you have completed the task, and then we will send you some cool stack as well. The sources there is learning.postman.com, so the learning center, the API network, explore.postman.com, and community.postman.com. You can explore them as well. And thanks for coming. I will share this feedback form with you, and please do share to fill this feedback form and let us know how the session went and what you learned about it. And yes, whenever you will be posting about what you learned, so please write a summary of what you have actually learned. And don't forget to use the hashtags and please tag me so that I can identify that you have completed the task. So if you have any queries, you can send me an email on my email ID. I will share this via email as well and on the chat box as well. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you guys for joining and see you next time.